Everyone I trusted told me not to do it. My mom, Rachel, my best friend from university, a colleague I respected, even a stranger at a party who somehow got involved in the conversation, which tells you something about how much everyone had an opinion about this. Every single person said, "Don't." And I did it anyway. Hello and welcome back to English with Ella. Today's story is about a decision, a big one, the kind that changes the shape of things. The kind where you stand at a fork in the road, one path well lit and sensible and approved by everyone who loves you, the other uncertain and risky and entirely your own, and you have to choose. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Ella, 27, originally from San Diego, California, living in East London. Every episode, I tell you a true story from my life in natural flowing English. Today's story might be the most important one I have told so far. It is called Everyone Said Don't. I Did It Anyway. Now, before I tell you what the decision was, and I will tell you, I promise, I am not going to keep you waiting forever. I want to talk about the experience of going against the people you love, because I think it is one of the hardest things a person can do. To go against the grain, which means to do something that goes against what most people around you think or expect, takes a particular kind of courage. Not the loud, dramatic courage of doing something obviously brave. The quieter, lonelier courage of doing something that the people you trust most think is a mistake. That is a different kind of hard. Because when everyone you love says don't, and you do it anyway, you carry the full weight of the decision yourself. If it goes well, that is wonderful. But if it goes wrong, there is nobody to share that with. You made the choice. You own the consequences. And consequences means the results of a decision. What happens because of what you chose? I knew all of this before I made this decision. I thought about it carefully. I talked it through with Rachel, who told me not to do it, but in the kindest possible way, which is very Rachel. I called my mom in San Diego at 11 o'clock at night London time because I needed to hear her voice, and she said, "Honey, I just don't think this is sensible," which is the most my mother thing she has ever said. And then I woke up one morning, and I knew. I want to tell you something about instinct, which means a feeling that comes from somewhere deep inside you, not from logic or reason, but from something harder to explain. A knowing, a pull. Sometimes your instinct is the quietest voice in the room, but it is also the most consistent one. It never really stops. My instinct had been telling me something for months. Everyone else's voices were louder, but my instinct was more persistent. So, what did I do? I quit my job, and I went freelance. I know. For some of you, that sounds straightforward. A career decision. Practical. Manageable. But let me tell you the context, because the context is everything. I had a good job, a stable job, a job with a salary and a pension and annual leave and all the things that people mean when they say, "You have a good job." I had been there for 2 years. My manager liked me. My colleagues were good people. The work was fine, not thrilling, not what I had imagined when I moved to London, but fine, stable, safe. And I wanted to leave it to write. Freelance. From home. From coffee shops. From wherever I happened to be. With no guaranteed income, no safety net, no one telling me it was going to be okay. Everyone said don't. And here is where the story really begins. So, the timeline. Because I think the timeline matters. The idea, the instinct, started about 8 months before I actually did it. It started as a thought I had at my desk one afternoon. Not a dramatic thought, just a quiet, what if I didn't have to be here? What if I wrote instead? I pushed it away. That's not sensible. You have a salary. You have security. You are 26 years old, living in one of the most expensive cities in the world. You cannot just decide to be a writer. The thought came back. It always came back. I started writing in the evenings and at weekends, just for myself at first. Essays, stories, observations, things I noticed walking around East London, things that made me laugh or think or feel something. I started a newsletter, a small email that went to about 40 people, mostly friends, mostly people who had signed up to be supportive rather than because they genuinely expected to read it. And then something unexpected happened. People started sharing it. People I didn't know subscribed. Someone with a significant following mentioned it online, and overnight I went from 40 subscribers to 400, then 800. Then, over the next few months, something that started to feel like a real readership. And I thought, maybe this could be something. I started pitching articles to websites and magazines. Pitching means sending an idea to an editor and asking if they would like to publish it, like knocking on a door and saying, "Here is something I made. Would you like it?" The first 15 pitches I sent were rejected. Not dramatically, just politely ignored, or a brief, "No thank you." The 16th was accepted. A small payment, not enough to live on, but enough to feel real. Over the next few months, I built up a small collection of published pieces and a small collection of regular clients, people who paid me to write for them regularly. Small amounts, irregular, nothing like a salary, but growing. And I sat at my desk one afternoon, the same desk where the thought had first arrived 8 months earlier, and I did the maths. Properly, not optimistically, honestly. How much was I earning freelance? How much did I need to live? What was the gap? How long could I survive if I left my job and it took time to build up? The maths was uncomfortable, but it was not impossible. And that evening, I told Rachel. Rachel listened to the whole thing, the newsletter, the pitches, the clients, the maths. She listened without interrupting, which is unusual for Rachel. She is an interrupter by nature, so I knew she was taking it seriously. And when I finished, she said, "How long have you been thinking about this?" I said, 8 months. She said, "And you're sure?" I said, "No, but I think I have to try." Rachel was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I think this is a terrible idea, and I think you should do it." Which is exactly the right thing to say, and also exactly the most Rachel thing she has ever said to me. And I want to stay with that for a moment. I think this is a terrible idea, and I think you should do it. Because I think that is one of the most loving things a friend can say. She was not pretending she thought it was sensible. She was not giving me false reassurance. She was saying, "I see the risk. I see why you might fail, and I believe in you enough to think you should try anyway." That conversation gave me something. Not certainty. I did not have certainty. But permission. The permission to leap. And to leap means to jump into something, to take a significant risk, to commit to something uncertain with full knowledge that it might not work. I leaped. And then, almost immediately, something went wrong. Stay with me. So, I handed in my notice on a Monday morning. My manager, a woman called Sandra, which is interesting because I also had a difficult experience with a woman called Sandra in a shoe shop, and I'm starting to wonder if it is the name. My manager Sandra was kind about it. Surprised, but kind. She said she hoped it went well. She meant it, I think. My last day was a Friday. People brought cake. There was a card. Someone had written in it, "We'll miss you, don't come back," which is the office way of saying we like you and we believe in you. I walked out of that building on a Friday afternoon, carrying a small box of desk things and feeling, I want to be honest here, absolutely terrified. Not the exhilarating terrified from the diving board, a different kind, a quieter, colder kind. Because the diving board had a net beneath it. The water was always there. The worst case scenario was, I don't jump. Or I jump and I surface and I'm fine. This had no net. The worst case scenario was, I fail. I run out of money. I have to go back to a job I left because I believed in something bigger. I have to explain to everyone who said don't that they were right. That was the thought that kept me company on the bus home that Friday evening. Not the exciting thoughts, the frightening ones. And then, 2 weeks into being freelance, something went wrong. My biggest client, the person who was paying me the most regularly, who represented nearly half of my freelance income at that point, sent me an email. They were restructuring. They were pausing all external content for 3 months. They were sorry. 2 weeks in, half my income, gone. I sat at my kitchen table and I read that email 3 times. And I thought, everyone said don't. And I did it anyway. And now, here we are. Now, I want to tell you what I did not do. Because I think the things we don't do in difficult moments matter as much as the things we do. I did not call Rachel and say, I told you this was a mistake, even though part of me wanted to. I did not call my mum and confirm her fears. I did not spiral into, this is over, I made the wrong choice, I should have stayed in the job. I made a cup of tea. I sat at my kitchen table, and I opened my laptop. And I pitched. 10 pitches that afternoon. 10 different editors, 10 different ideas. The kind of pitching I had been doing for months. Knock on the door, here is something I made, would you like it? 3 of those 10 pitches were accepted within a week. Not enough to replace the lost income immediately, but enough to keep going. Enough to say, this is not over. This is just hard. And hard is not the same as impossible. There is a phrase I love. To back yourself. To back yourself means to believe in yourself enough to keep going. To bet on your own abilities. To choose yourself even when the situation is difficult. It is the opposite of doubt. And doubt means the feeling of not being sure, of questioning whether you made the right choice. I had doubt, a lot of it. But I chose to back myself anyway. And slowly, not quickly, not smoothly, not without more difficult moments, things started to build. I want to tell you about a moment. A specific moment. About 4 months into being freelance. It was a Tuesday morning. I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop near my flat, the one where the staff know my name and my order and occasionally ask how the writing is going. I had my laptop open. I was working on a piece I was genuinely excited about, one of those rare writing days where the words come without fighting, where you look up and 2 hours have passed and you did not notice. And my phone rang. a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. I am suspicious of unknown numbers, a habit I developed after a very confusing incident involving a parking fine that turned out to be for a car I have never owned. But something made me pick up. It was a magazine. A proper one. One I had been reading since I was a student. One that, when I was sitting at my old desk thinking, what if? I had thought, one day I would like to write for them. In the way you think about something that feels just slightly out of reach. They had read something I had written. They wanted to commission a piece, which means they wanted to pay me to write something specifically for them. A proper fee. A proper deadline. A proper byline, which means your name appearing on the piece publicly in a publication you respect. I said, yes, absolutely, of course. I put the phone down. I sat in the coffee shop, and I cried. Not dramatically, just quietly, into my coffee, in a way that I hoped nobody noticed. The kind of tears that come not from sadness, but from the release of something you have been holding for a long time. The relief, that feeling of something finally landing, mixed with something else. Something that took me a moment to identify. Pride. Not arrogance, not I told you so. Just quiet, private, genuine pride. The kind that comes from having backed yourself when it was hard. From having leaped when everyone said don't. From having pitched 10 times when one thing fell apart instead of using it as a reason to stop. I thought about my mom. I thought about Rachel. I thought about everyone who had said, "This is not sensible." And I felt not the need to prove them wrong exactly. Something more complicated than that. Something more like, I understand why you said that. And I am so glad I didn't listen. Because here's the thing about the people who tell you not to do something. Most of them are not trying to hold you back. Most of them love you. Most of them are trying to protect you from the pain of failing at something you care about. That is a kind impulse, a loving one. But the pain of not trying, the quiet grief of wondering what might have happened, that is also real. And that pain lasts longer. It does not go away with time. It gets quieter, perhaps, but it does not go away. I am not saying everyone should quit their job and leap into the unknown. That is not the lesson. The finances have to work. The timing has to be considered. The leap has to be prepared for as much as it can be. But I am saying the instinct, that quiet, persistent voice that keeps saying, what if? It is worth listening to. It knows something. That Tuesday morning in the coffee shop, 4 months after everyone said don't, and I did it anyway, was a turning point. A turning point means a moment when things change significantly, when a new direction becomes clear, when you can feel something shifting. Not because everything became easy after that. It didn't. Freelance life is not easy. It is uncertain and irregular, and sometimes lonely, and requires a particular tolerance for not knowing what next month looks like. But that Tuesday morning, I knew. This is the right life for me. Not the easiest one, the right one. And that is worth more than easy. I want to talk about something that I think about a lot now, about owning a decision. And to own a decision means to take full responsibility for it, to not look for someone else to blame if it goes wrong, to carry it yourself with both hands and say, "This was mine." When you make a decision that everyone around you disagrees with, you own it completely. There is nobody to share the blame with if it fails. And there is nobody to share the credit with if it succeeds. Both of those things are true at the same time. I owned my decision. I own it still. The difficult months, the lost client, the pitching into silence, the tears in the coffee shop, all of mine. And the commission, the byline, the Tuesday morning of pride, also all mine. There is something very clarifying about that, about knowing that the life you are living is genuinely the one you chose, not the one that was expected of you, not the one that made the most sense on paper, the one you looked at and said, "That one," even when everyone said don't. I do not think of it as proving anyone wrong. I never wanted that. The people who said don't were not wrong to say it. They were responding to the risk, which was real. They were not wrong about the risk. They were just not able to see past it to what might be on the other side. And that is okay. That is what we do for the people we love. We see the danger first. We try to protect them from it. And sometimes, the right thing is to let them leap anyway. My mom called me about a month after the commission. She had found the piece I had written. Someone had sent it to her, I still don't know who, and she called to tell me she had read it. 3 times, she said. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "I'm proud of you, honey." I did not say I told you so. There was no point. And besides, she had never not been proud of me. She had just been scared for me. There is a difference. I said, "Thank you, Mum. That means everything." And it did. If you are enjoying English with Ella, please subscribe. New episodes regularly, new stories, natural flowing English for wherever you are in the world. Now, I want to tell you something about next episode, because next episode is different. I have been telling you stories about my life, my misadventures, my decisions, my smoke alarms and shoe shops and diving boards, and I love those stories. I will keep telling them. But next episode, I want to tell you about someone else. Someone whose story I find extraordinary. Someone who started with nothing, and I mean genuinely nothing, and built something that changed the world. It is a story about failure and resilience, and what happens when you refuse to stop. It is one of the most remarkable true stories I know. That episode is called "She Was Rejected 12 Times. Then Everything Changed." I think you are going to love it. Until then, keep listening, keep learning, and whatever your don't is, consider doing it anyway. See you in the next one. Bye for now.